So good afternoon. My name is Kirsty Creighton. I'm the Manager of Program Development at the Alzheimer Society of Nova Scotia, and I have the pleasure of introducing the next our next session, Charting the Course to a Dementia-Friendly Nova Scotia. I'm going to provide a very brief, big picture about dementia-friendly communities internationally, and then we'll hear from our speakers. And at the end of this presentation, I think before we have the door prizes, we look forward to sharing a little non-alcoholic toast with all of you to launch dementia-friendly communities in Nova Scotia. So we hope you'll stay for that. So there are dementia-friendly initiatives happening all over the world. So we've heard a little bit about them this morning, actually from the very first speaker this morning. We've heard about them throughout. So they are around the world. Internationally, the WHO refers to dementia-inclusive societies, and their toolkit supports individuals, communities, and countries in raising awareness of and empowering people living with dementia to remain in and be a significant part of their community. So that's the WHO, big international picture. Dementia Australia talks about creating a dementia-friendly nation and of support for becoming a dementia friend, creating an inclusive community and making your organization more dementia friendly. So again, an Australian take. In the United States, they have Dementia Friendly America, a national network of communities, organizations, and individuals seeking to ensure that communities across the US are equipped to support people living with dementia and their caregivers. And there are lots more of examples, but those will be the ones we'll hear about for now. So you see it's an international movement. Here in Canada, we have the Dementia Friendly Canada Project. So this is funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada, Dementia Community Investment Fund. And it's a 4-year initiative, so it's from 2019 to 2023, so we're coming to the end of this particular project. Intended to foster the creation of dementia-friendly communities. The project is a partnership between 4 different Canadian Alzheimer's societies, and is intended to foster the creation of dementia-friendly communities across Canada. The Alzheimer's Society here in Nova Scotia is not officially part of this 4-year project, but we are benefiting from their learnings and resources. So the goals of Dementia Friendly Canada, the big Canadian picture, are to train Canada's workforce to be dementia friendly, to promote and educate the general public about dementia through awareness campaigns and resources, and to achieve sustainability and ensure growth of the Dementia Friendly Canada initiative across the country. So these are the 3 main goals, which are guided by the objectives, and this is the heart and soul of it, that all Canadians living with dementia will feel valued and empowered, that organizations, businesses, and governments across Canada become more inclusive and accessible to people living with dementia and their care partners. And as individuals, so each and every one of us, and as a society, we challenge stigma and ensure people can live well with dementia. So let's see if the magic happens. So this is a video, a bit of an informational video by Dementia Friendly Canada.
Did you know that more than 500,000 Canadians, like me, live with dementia? Or that 1 in 5 Canadians care for someone who lives with dementia? Like me, many people living with dementia still live in our communities after we are diagnosed. It isn't always easy, though. Often we feel left out and worried about how we'll be treated by others. Sometimes people just don't understand what dementia is and how it affects the brain, or know what to do if we forget something or get confused. So they seem frustrated or dismissive, and sometimes the places we'd like to go are just more difficult to get around. I once got lost trying to find the washrooms in a restaurant because of the loud music, poor lighting, and confusing signs. But it doesn't have to be like this. Everyone in the community can play a part in helping people living with dementia feel welcome and in creating accessible and inclusive spaces for everybody to enjoy. When our communities are dementia-friendly, people living with dementia feel less worried about how we will be treated and more confident about going out. Have you ever thought about what it would be like to live with dementia in your community or workplace? Is your community supportive, inclusive, and accessible for people living with dementia? Is it dementia-friendly in ways that let people stay engaged in community life? Would you recognize the signs that someone may be living with dementia and be able to offer the right type of support? Would you be comfortable talking to someone if you knew they were living with dementia? Would you know how to respond if someone seemed confused or had trouble expressing themselves? Are the businesses, organizations, and public spaces in your community designed so people can use them independently without getting disoriented, lost, or experiencing stigma because they are living with dementia? People living with dementia shouldn't have to work harder than everyone else to stay a part of the community. Wouldn't it be great if the neighborhoods and communities that we all share were dementia-friendly? Together with the Alzheimer Society and community members like you, let's keep challenging the stereotypes and building a dementia-friendly Canada where everyone feels welcomed and supported. Take the first step and visit alzheimer.ca/dementia-friendly Canada to learn more about Dementia-Friendly Canada. You'll find lots of information, education, and resources to help you and your organization become more dementia-friendly members of your community.
So with this in mind as a national and international context, let's look at Nova Scotia. The Alzheimer Society of Nova Scotia engaged the Nova Scotia Centre on Aging last February and March to better understand how the resources being developed through this project, the Dementia Friendly Canada project, can be leveraged here in Nova Scotia to create dementia-friendly communities, and also generally just to how to move forward with the dementia-friendly community initiative here in our province. So Pam Fancey will speak about the Nova Scotia Centre on Aging project report. Pamela is the Associate Director of the Nova Scotia Centre on Aging at Mount St. Vincent University. She has, I'm gonna put my glasses on for this. I thought I could wing it. She has led evaluation projects and contributed to revisions of the dementia care course and continuing care assistant curriculum. Pam was the project lead for the center's work on the dementia-friendly communities implementation plan for Nova Scotia. As a result of recommendations from that NSCA report, the Alzheimer's Society hired a staff member to lead the initiative within our organization. So Beth House is here as team lead dementia-friendly communities at the Alzheimer's Society. Beth has a Bachelor of Recreation and is the dementia-friendly communities team lead with ASNS. With a therapeutic recreation background specializing in geriatric populations, Beth spent 20 years working in long-term care, enhancing the quality of life for the residents she served. When Beth is not working, she's busy in her garden with her husband, 2 kids, and a dog, Rory. So Pam will speak first about the NSCA report, and then Beth will speak about the plans for implementation. And if time allows, we'll have some questions at the end.
Thank you very much. And it is nice to know that the work that we do sometimes actually results in something like a staff position and moving forward with an idea, with a concept. So my task today is just give you a little bit of background on our piece of work that we did for the Society in February and March, which led to what you'll see later in terms of Beth's presentation, like how the Society is going to kick off and move forward with dementia-friendly work here in Nova Scotia. So our work was to sort of build that knowledge base for the Society, to look at what was out there with respect to other initiatives, to get sort of the lessons learned, the current landscape, also to look at the Dementia Friendly Canada project in particular and understand what from that for provincial pan-Canadian initiative could be good here for Nova Scotia or be leveraged for Nova Scotia. And then taking all of that information and then actually thinking about, well, where are the strengths here in Nova Scotia? What has the society been doing, and how can that be sort of built on the strengths and the assets of the society's work to move forward with dementia-friendly work here in Nova Scotia? So a number of key sort of big picture messages. There's a lot of work being done. Unfortunately, very limited evaluation of these initiatives. It's great to talk about, you know, to become a dementia-friendly community, but how do we actually understand that exists, what that, you know, that actually happens? There are a number of resources available through all these initiatives, which is wonderful. We don't have to start from scratch. There are things that the society here can use and build upon. And certainly a strong message that we heard, and the society is thinking in this direction, that you really need to think about this work strategically and for the long term. You don't want to go into this, you know, a one and done kind of approach. You want to think about the long-term work that you're committing to with this kind of initiative. We're talking about community change here. We're talking about attitude change, behavior change, and that takes a lot of work. I mentioned kind of what works best for Nova Scotia, and it definitely, you know, we learned that we need this champion, if you will, this leader organization to take the reign. It's not the only piece in the puzzle. It is a collective effort. It's to benefit everybody, individuals, our communities, our health system, if we can support people living with dementia to be active and engaged in their communities. So it has a collective effort, and it takes a collective, kind of back to what John said, that village concept. It's not just the society's role, although they will be the champion in this and the leadership in this, but it's going to take everyone in this room and everyone online, and, you know, businesses and organizations to buy into this and to really make it happen. Right, green button, Pam. So just quickly, our work was 4 components. We did sort of the traditional kind of literature search, looking at these other initiatives internationally. We also held focus groups with persons with dementia, care partners, and staff of the society to help understand sort of what they understand to be supportive in their community, what does supportiveness look like, and what does unsupportiveness look like. So those were very helpful conversations. We also met with all the coordinators of the Public Health Agency of Canada project, so each of those provincial coordinators, as well as the national coordinator, to understand what brought them to this work, what were they doing in their respective provinces, and in what way is this project, the PHAC project, enabling them to move forward with this work. So those conversations were very insightful, and really understanding that each of those provinces were at a different point, they were doing different things, not surprisingly, but understanding sort of their starting point and their strengths again in terms of moving forward with this work. And then we also looked at the online education modules that are part of this Public Health Agency of Canada's project. So they have developed 4 modules. Come up. Yeah. There are 4 modules that are self-directed online. They run between 15 to 20 minutes, depending on which one. And they're really intended for sort of customer-facing settings, so people who work in retail, banks, restaurants, public transit, places where people, you know, we want to continue to keep people engaged in doing their regular activities, being socially connected to the things that they do in their daily lives. So these online education modules are intended for these work settings for people to take, to help understand in what ways their setting, their workplace, the way they interact, the language that they use, all the things we've been talking about today, to help build this new knowledge about what it means to, when you may become aware of someone with dementia, or help even identify, perhaps, I am interacting with someone with dementia, and how might my behavior or my language, my response need to be adjusted. So we reviewed those modules to understand, you know, to what extent they would have a fit with the Nova Scotia context, for example, and also to understand, you know, are they good learning modules, this kind of thing. Very easy, plain language throughout. It's not just about sort of getting content, but there's interaction throughout the modules. You're sort of encouraged to think about in what way you might be able to use this information in your work setting. So there's sort of those call to actions throughout. Case scenarios, good examples, things that we actually heard through some of our focus group conversations, similar situations in terms of people seeing supportiveness or unsupportiveness. So they're really good fit in terms of how those online modules, what they are and how they were developed. There's also tip sheets, which are developed to accompany the online modules that we looked at. These can be standalone resources for settings that may not be able to engage in the online education. They help with language use, interactions, even sort of doing an assessment of your workplace or your restaurant or this kind of thing to help understand what might be some physical barriers to people participating in that particular setting. So good resources to be able to use and leveraged from that particular national project. So there were a number of considerations that our work identified, but in particular, I just want to talk about perhaps 4 of the key ones that are really considered sort of keys for success in moving forward with this work. And one of them is the definition of community. And this is, I think, through our review, we really learned that how we talk about dementia-friendly community from the outset is going to be very important. Are we thinking, very geographically defined, sort of, our municipal unit or, the Halifax City, this kind of thing? Or do we think about community in the context of the communities in which we engage and live out our lives, whether that's our faith communities, our workplaces, our book clubs, all these different types of communities. So how Nova Scotia goes forward with defining community in that context will be very important in terms of its communication as well as potential evaluation work down the road. So our review uncovered a lot of different definitions of community, some of them very place-based, very geographically bound, others this broader definition of communities. Another key consideration is this idea of education to action. So while I talked about the online modules being, very good, through, education is important, we all buy into that in this room, I'm sure. Education alone, though, is not necessarily going to make the difference. It's putting that education to action. So in what ways can this education, that if people do these online modules, what does that look like? How do we ensure that something's going to happen as a result of this education? So some of the other societies in Canada have been building in sort of follow-up of people who take the education. So maybe perhaps a town hall to talk about ways in which they've been able to apply the education in their work setting. So it kind of builds this idea of a network and a sharing of information and ideas. Another province is thinking about sort of a community of practice, if you will, around this. So there are ways to think about how we just move, how we take the education and continue to work with it, this idea of continuous learning. Very important part, in our opinion, in terms of success for this initiative. Sustainability, kind of connected to that, and this longer term vision. So not that it, take it away from just sort of this one and done approach, make it longer term, and that takes a sustained effort. So it's not enough for a workplace to have its staff, take this online education. Again, so what? They've got the education, staff turnover, you get new staff all the time. So how do we continually support and build this on a longer term basis? These are key considerations to think about as the society moves forward with this work so that it doesn't become kind of a one and done short term initiative. And then the last one I want to talk about is the inclusion of persons with dementia. And I don't think that's a big insight for anyone here in this room, but absolutely it was a common message through all the work that we reviewed, as well as the other provinces' approach, that you need to have the people that were most trying to support and benefit at the table involved in this work from the outset. And there were various examples of this through the different provinces, you know, advisor capacities. Some of them, they talked about being those champions, going into workplaces that they're going into places where they frequently go to, like their bank or their pharmacy, and saying, you know, I'm a person with dementia and I really think you should be involved in this work. So really becoming the champion within their community and the places in which they interact. And also in part in terms of those town halls or those ongoing continuous learning opportunities, having them as part of that work. So definitely, you know, a key consideration to this work is including persons with dementia. The other ones are kind of self-explanatory. You want to build on relationships that you already have. You want to think about evaluation. And you want to think about some type of recognition or designation program, although there's a lot of mixed approaches to that and how that, again, can be sustained without too much administrative work around that. Two other key strategies, if you will, is to think about linking up with communities that are already kind of engaged in the age-friendly community work. So you've already got places in the province that have bought into this idea that we need to think about the social and physical barriers that, you know, act as barriers to people, keeping older people engaged in their community. So adding dementia-friendly community work to those communities is kind of a win-win. So you want to think about those communities and work with them. Town of New Glasgow would be a good example because they recently won an international award for their work on age-friendly community work here in the province. And you'd also want to think about other initiatives like as our accessibility initiative here in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia plans to be fully accessible by 2030. So you want to be able to get at those tables and part of those conversations to bring that dementia lens to that work that the province is engaged in over the next 7 or 8 years. So again, build on these existing initiatives to maximize the effort here. So then part of our work was also to come up with an implementation plan for the society, or at least for them to think about an implementation plan. And we proposed a multi-phased approach, not necessarily in any sequence, but things that through the work became important aspects to think about in moving this forward in the province. Some of these can be interrelated and overlapped. Certainly it's the long-term initiative. Very resource intensive, without a doubt. You need dedicated resources to move this forward. Thus, Beth. But you know, certainly focus on phase one is essential, getting that foundation, that baseline work in place. Things like how do we, you know, authentically include persons with dementia in this work from the outset? What are some of the resources that we currently have here in Nova Scotia to build on? What makes sense here for Nova Scotia to have its toolbox ready, if you will, before it goes out with its communications. Communications, very key as part of this work. What's its definition of community? Are we going to be involved in any kind of recognition or designation program, and what does that look like? And then again, having access to those online modules. How do we do that? How do we understand who's taking it? Do we do follow-up with them? Having those processes thought through in advance. That's all part of phase one, very critical planning work to make this initiative a success. So just to wrap up, the society is definitely the leader and the champion here. They're willing to, they see the value in this work, but we also understand that, you know, it's not only about the society work. Again, it's everybody's commitment to this idea, workplaces, health providers, our communities. There's a lot of considerations that go into this kind of movement, if you will. We are talking about community change. We're not just talking about education, we're talking about making education make a difference, if you will. So you need, there's a lot of resource, there's a lot of time to go into this to make it successful. I'm very pleased that our work has taken us, the society, to this point, and that society is willing to action some of these ideas. And I'm going to hand it over to Beth to explain what that looks like from the society's perspective.
Thank you very much, Pam. Yes, this, I've been carrying it around with me. It hasn't been highlighted because I didn't want to, but it's found its way into various pieces of work that we have been doing. So it is a very well-used document. It's a very thoroughly laid out plan. So thank you very much for putting that together for us. It's taken a lot of the initial work off of me, and I can go, instead of figuring out how we're going to do it, okay, how do we put this into practice? So it's marvelous. So you talked about a definition. We're not quite there yet, but this is what we're thinking. Dementia-friendly communities support, respect, and include people living with dementia and their care partners in the places they live, work, and play. It's a community that enables contribution, opportunity, and choice. So why is it, yeah, we are a little excited about this. So why is it important to become dementia-friendly? When organizations, businesses, municipalities, the general public become dementia-friendly, it ensures that people can age in place. We've talked about that all day. And remain active members of their community. Dementia-friendly principles, both social and physical, Catherine touched on those, are not just dementia-friendly. They will make spaces more inclusive, supportive, and accessible for everybody. So they're a great way to touch on age-friendly initiatives. There's a lot of overlap there. There's just a few more considerations that you might want to take into consideration when you're adding on to the age-friendly movements to another layer of dementia-friendly. Businesses and organizations that are respectful and responsive to the needs of people affected by dementia are valued, and they're integral parts to building a dementia-friendly society. It's our social responsibility to support all members of the community. And so we talked about making change. We all know how hard it is to change a habit, one habit for ourselves. So can you imagine changing a lot of habits and a lot of preconceived notions and stereotypes and stigmas for the entire province? Even though we are a little province, we are very spread out. There's a lot of us still. So imagine changing habits and all of those things for a whole province. It will take work, and not just me, but everybody. So the Dementia-Friendly Canada, oh, that doesn't look, there we go. So the Dementia-Friendly Canada project is different from our dementia-friendly communities. The Dementia-Friendly Canada project concentrates on building a general awareness, developing the resources that Pam mentioned, sector-specific education, and the dementia-friendly community initiatives are on the local and provincial level. And it looks different province to province, and it tends to focus on growing relationships. So if we have a wonderful age-friendly community in Pictou, well, let's capitalize on that and figure out how do we build on it instead of recreating a wheel. So fundamental to this work is addressing the prevailing stigma that's associated with a dementia diagnosis, creating an understanding of how the physical and social environments play a key role in people being able to stay connected in their communities and their social lives, and engage in regular activities of daily living. We had our community night last night, and we talked a lot about how important it is to stay engaged in community, whether you're living with a diagnosis of dementia or not. We really figured that out during COVID when we were cut off, and we had to figure out new ways to stay engaged. So it's important for everybody, not just for people living with dementia. So we at the Alzheimer's Society of Nova Scotia are committed to building an evidence-informed rollout tailored to Nova Scotia, focusing on key audiences across the province. So online, the website is there at the bottom, Dementia Friendly Canada. They have tools and resources. Pam listed a lot of them. The modules give an overview of dementia, the social and physical considerations, and examples of ways to adapt policies, practices, and services to be more dementia-friendly. Pam talked about all of the tip sheets, which we have available on our dementia-friendly community table, which is a part of the Alzheimer's Society table back at the back of the room. And we've also developed some of our own materials. So we have a brand new one-page overview of dementia-friendly communities here in Nova Scotia. We also will be developing awards or not rewards, a recognition program, so that we can, so when a business has done something, we can have some way to show that. We don't know what that looks like yet. That's part of the process. A Nova Scotia tool that we already have are our patients and companion cards. So these cards, which are also available at our Alzheimer's Society table, are cards that people living with dementia or supporting someone living with dementia can subtly show to a bus driver or a teller or a restaurant server to indicate that a minute or two might be needed just to make things flow easier. So where do we start? With the plan from the community, the Nova Scotia Centre on Aging. There's lots of work going on behind the scenes to set the stage. So we're narrowing down our first key target audiences. We're honing our definition of what our dementia-friendly community is. So figuring out what those target audiences are. Where are we already doing some work? Is it recreation centers and libraries? Is it restaurant and retail? Is it first responders? Because we are involved with the SARNIF, I can't remember what the letters stand for, project. So we're involved with that. Maybe that's where we want to start, where other provinces have found great success in starting with libraries. But we will figure that out. We can't reach everyone right away. We need to start small. But we have tools and resources from other provinces that we can share. So if there is a municipality that is really keen and eager, but we're not quite ready to help with that yet, we can direct them to the materials that BC has developed. That is a whole booklet on what to do if you want to become or want to become more of a dementia-friendly municipality. So we can point you in the right direction. Even if that's not the target audience for this particular year, we are still here to help. We will create an advisory committee made up of people living with the diagnosis, care partners, Alzheimer's Society staff, other invested stakeholders, so that we can have a good thought out plan. And I think I mentioned it already, got out a little out of context. We'll create a recognition program so that businesses can show if they have been doing some of this education. But again, it's figuring out, well, how do we keep up with the monitoring of that? What's the plan? What is sustainable? What can we manage? In my current role, I'm actually only 50% dementia-friendly community lead. I still talk to people on our info line and do public education like our You First program, which everybody should take, as well as our family caregiver. I know, another plug in there. So right now it's only half of my role. The plan is to have it a full-time role until we get this under our belt, and then it's maintaining. But we don't exactly know what that looks like just yet. That's part of the future. Okay. So what can you do right now in your communities? There are both social and physical characteristics of dementia-friendly communities, which Catherine mentioned. And when implemented, they will help support people living with dementia by reducing the anxiety, the stigma, the frustration. Many people living with dementia will be at home for a long time, and with some support from their community, are often able to maintain a wonderful quality of life. So this is possible when community members are educated about dementia. So when someone goes for a walk and gets turned around at their local convenience store, the cashier recognizes them and says, "Oh, Mr. Smith, I think you want to go that way. That's the shorter route." Just as a nice little nudge, so that he is still able to get out and exercise and walk and spend time in his community. So you can learn about dementia. Invite us to host a presentation. We would love to do that. We have community coordinators across the province, so even if you're joining us virtually, we will come to you. We could also do things virtually now. COVID forced us to go online, and we have done a great job, if I do say so myself. We have lots of education that we can deliver online. We have lots of videos and our alt-eds that we now have a wonderful repository of. So there's lots of information out there, whether you're in Halifax or you're in a very capital or rural area. You can help raise awareness by hosting an event or inviting us out, speaking about it, bringing it up at meetings and in your communities. Involve people living with dementia. We're all here because we have some connection with dementia. So whether that is at your workplace, in your community, in your neighborhood, or in your personal life, bring it up, talk about it. Form a dementia-friendly community working group or committee in your neighborhood, where people can work together on efforts to become more dementia-friendly. Include people living with dementia and their partners in care in the efforts. Their lived experience is key, like Pam said, to making sure that this is a sustainable effort, and that the solutions and priorities are as impactful as possible. Some other ways that your community can be more dementia-friendly, including business practices that are implemented and employees encouraged to take some time to meet a patron's needs, and it's not all just rush. And in your community or workplace, you can start by designating a person to get in touch with me, and we can figure out a plan. You can print off some of the materials that were shared, share with your colleagues, share with the convenience store down the road or the hairdresser you know. So what can you do? So our goal is for people living with dementia to be welcomed, included, and supported in their communities. You're all here today, like I said, because we have a connection with dementia. I'm asking you to think about, what can you do? Things like learning about dementia, developing your skills so you can be supportive and inclusive. Call us if you have any questions about things you want to learn. We're more than happy to point you in the right direction and share resources. Avoid using memory and dementia-related jokes that can trivialize the experience of people living with dementia. Challenge myths and misconceptions. All people with dementia will be violent. And educate and share your knowledge. Reach out to people living with dementia. Share the tip sheets that you can print off our website or pick up at our table. And we know that there are wonderful things happening all across the province. We would like you to share them. Share what's happening in your community. There are national awards, the inaugural national awards, and we would like to have more Nova Scotia representation there. We know of a few things that are happening, and we have made some nominations, but we would love to have more. It's very BC-centric right now. So there is awards for a dementia-friendly voice, which is a person living with dementia who is an integral part of a project geared to improve the lives of people living with dementia. A dementia-friendly ally is the ally who's been integral. The grassroots group, a small group who's been improved the lives, as well as dementia-friendly municipalities and dementia-friendly organizations, both large and small. So if you have questions about dementia-friendly communities, give me a call, send me an email, drop by. We're open to having people into the office now. So yes, we will now move on to the question period. Do we have time?
So maybe we have time for one question, maybe two.
Dementia-friendly organizations, would you, for example, go into an organization, provide them with training to make that a dementia-friendly organization? They could have a seal on their door that says, we are supporting the dementia-friendly community, we have been trained, whatever, and the more and more that happens, other community or other organizations might.
Yeah, so that's definitely a possibility. We're very early in the journey to be figuring out how we want to roll this out in the province. And so there very may well be a sticker that goes on the door that says 80% of this business has taken some education, whether it's a presentation by us or whether it's conducting the online modules, but there will be something. We just don't know exactly what it is just yet.
Excellent, thank you very much. And doubly thank you very much to Pam and Beth for your presentation today. And because Beth is a staff member, I'm just gonna do this. So Pam, thank you for getting us going, and Beth, thank you for leading the way. And I'm sure there'll be many discussions, and hopefully many of you will be involved in those discussions.